Are these things mythical beings? Are they gods? Are they...
That also seems like a way that they are potentially setting themselves up for a next season and a season after that. Because there's still going to be 5 more crises after that.
Honestly, this is my favorite version of Day. He is so great. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Sterling and I are talking about the hit sci-fi fantasy show Foundation Season 3, Episode 2, Shadows in the Math. So spoilers are ahead. And if you enjoy our content, a thumbs up would be appreciated. And if you want to stay up to date with all of our breakdowns and discussions, just hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification so you don't miss a single one of our episodes. But with that, Sterling, what are your thoughts?
So starting off in Ignis, I feel like we got typical Hari, to kind of take control of the situation and do something that is in Foundation's benefit, but not necessarily something that everybody likes, Like once he got consent to be the one to stay, she's still expected to come out every year.
Yeah.
So I think that was a huge surprise for her to come out like that. But at the same time, very much in keeping with like how Hari rolls.
Do you think that he didn't wake her up because he was there now? Like that was the reason why that she wasn't waking up?
I think, yeah, he doesn't need her to wake up every year or so to check in on things because he is there handling that. He needs her to be in her prime dealing with the Mule. That's the role that he thinks that's right for her.
You could make the argument that she needs to come out and train the Mentalics. Like Hari knows psychohistory, but like it even shows Gaal training the Mentalics with using their powers.
Right.
So it could, and I get the point of, trying to, keep her in her peak for when the Mule comes. But I would also say that, Gaal is kind of still a new Mentalic in her own right, in a sense. She just found out last season that she's a Mentalic. She pretty much goes to sleep right away. So, like, her honing her ability, I think, is still important. And I think Hari's messing up with this. I think he should have woke her up a little bit.
I feel like he probably thinks that, maybe that's important, but that's not, like, the deciding factor of getting through the third crisis. Like, he made it seem like everything rides on getting the plan back before the third crisis. And then after that, we can deal with like what comes after that, because there's still going to be 5 more crises after that, which I thought was an interesting surprise because they haven't really made it seem like it's such a definitive number. That also seems like a way that they are potentially setting themselves up for a next season and a season after that. Whereas up until literally that line, it felt like
this is the final.
Yes.
Yeah. I did feel like because it's only off of 3 like short stories that Foundation is based off of. So I kind of felt like we were maybe, coming to an end. But then once he said the 8 crises, and I, haven't read the stories, so I'm not sure if he flushes out all 8 crises or if it's 3 crises. Potentially we could see in this season, if this is wrapped up, that this could be the finale, and they'd be like, we know this was the hardest crisis, right? This is the most pivotal one. If we can beat this one, then yes, even though there are more crises, we can just say that we know we'll figure them out because we figured out the hardest one.
Yeah. It was also interesting that in learning about that it sounds like the Invictus is still around, which I thought that was definitely partially destroyed by getting shot at and then thoroughly destroyed by crashing into the planet. Now, I know that Hari did some shenanigans to get all the people off the planet, so maybe he somehow also got the Invictus off the planet, but it kind of seemed like the Invictus crashing into the planet was what caused it to implode.
Right. I thought that was odd, too, that they brought up the Invictus, and I'm not quite sure the importance of that ship. Like, it feels like it's an old ship. it exploded. I don't see how they're bringing it back, which also kind of leads to another odd thing for me.
Okay.
When she's talking about the second foundation and how they're reaching out to the stars and they're getting more metallics. It shows ships that go up and they leave using the like hyperdrive or the technique that the other Foundation people are using. But to me, it would seem that if they're on the second Foundation on this planet of Ignis, they didn't get the technology of the Invictus to have them have those jump things, which also makes it more glaring too, because when Hari talks about it, he was like, oh, when he's about to go into that veil or whatever, he says, no jump port, no this, no that. And it's like, technically, you guys shouldn't even have that because you weren't there. Like, that's a Foundation thing, not the second Foundation. Like, you guys aren't sharing stuff.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I don't know what's happened in 150 years. Maybe that's a plot hole. Maybe they've figured that out. My big question is, like, I love that they brought this Kale looking person back so that plot line wasn't just like dropped, because it really kind of brings back these questions of like, who is she? But also, previously it seemed like it was maybe just one person, but there was a line here that implied that there's a whole them
group of them.
Yeah.
And they can't put skin in the game, but they can put Hari in to make him have skin in the game. Are these things mythical beings? Are they gods? Are they?
I mean, it almost seems like a third Foundation. Like the second Foundation is there to make sure that like the first Foundation stays on track, and it kind of feels like this group has meddled a little bit to make sure that the second Foundation is on track. So there's like all these different groups putting their thumbs on the scale to like. Right. Make sure that a certain outcome happens. But like you said, it does make me curious of like who are these people, and like what are their intentions, and why can't they have skin in the game?
Right. And they even asked when Hari was like, can I go to this place? Can I get one reprieve here? And she was like, well, your new body was reprieve. So like they have the ability to basically resurrect people, which is a crazy ability in this world. So they seem extra powerful, but also like they can't do things, right? So like they can bring back somebody alive, but they can't just be like, all right, well, boom, we defeated Empire. Where do you think Hari went through that veil?
I mean, you asked the question of like, are they gods or not? And normally in science fiction, I would say no, but I think there's a real chance that, I mean, it does seem like there are gods in this world. And so maybe we're finally meeting them. And if they're anything like the Roman gods, sometimes one will go off and like do something that they shouldn't necessarily do, and, give man fire or intervene here or something like that. And so maybe that's kind of what we're seeing, is like one of them that is taking a stand for something they believe in and doing like the one small thing that they can do to give humanity a chance.
Bring Hari back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious where he's going. Part of me thinks that he might go talk to Empire, just because I feel like we've seen, at least in every season, Hari has talked to Empire to be like, hey, let's I'm letting you know this is happening. So,
and that would be a really interesting dynamic. This like an aging, dying Hari and a Day that has given up all hope and realizes that he's just a cog in the wheel. So he's like, F it, I'm just gonna resort to drugs and a lavish lifestyle with my ferret and my
gambling.
Yeah. So the gambling was interesting to me because he cheated, right? Like you saw him pull something from his robe or put something into his robe, and yet he lost. So I think there's more to this story with this Day. I think that I don't think he's just going to do drug use the entire time. I think there's going to be some kind of redemptive arc. But I think he cheated to lose. I think that he wants to help that person's daughter. And he can't directly do it because he apologized that, like, I'm sorry that there's nothing I can do.
Right. Which you would think that if you're Day, you could do anything. You could save whoever you wanted.
So it seemed like gambling and losing this huge thing was the only way to, like, sneakily give him something to help him with his daughter.
Honestly, this is my favorite version of Day. He is so great. Like, all the other Days are shitty. Like, I've always liked this actor, Lee Pace, who's played Day. And he's done a really good job of playing, like, a really malicious emperor that is just destroying lives and people. And this Day is just such a chill Day. He's like quippy, he's laid back, he's a little chauvinistic, but just for like a good, slicing his arm to throw blood on his brother. Yeah. But yeah, that gambling scene, I didn't quite understand its relevance while watching it. I saw him cheat and I saw him lose, and then he's talking about his daughter and he's like, I wish I could help you. But then he also makes the comment as he's leaving where he's like, obey me or I could have you all disemboweled, and it's like, it was an odd scene because I didn't feel like it did much, but I didn't think about him cheating to lose. I thought he was cheating to cheat, but then he lost and he was so humble about it. I think it's just showing a more human Day that we have never seen before.
Yeah. And I think that potentially also points to the fact that he is more aware of what's going on and in control of what he's doing than it seems. Like when you first kind of see, it seems like he's just letting the drugs, erase his worries and just kind of living this lavish lifestyle to not have to think about the problems. But I think this potentially points to the fact that he is more engaged than it initially looked like. And he is more involved. He is doing things. He does have agency. And I think if the right problem arises, I think he'll rise to the occasion.
I could even see him switch into Team Foundation.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I'm glad they explained why Dusk was being killed earlier, because
yes,
which ties into Day having a little bit more authority, who could maybe prolong his the deafening, we'll just call it, when he gets zapped, and
Ascension.
Yeah, Ascension. I did think in my mind, I was like, you got to explain this somehow. Like, he clearly is not as old as the other Dusks that go through and get zapped. And having this, since the genetic drift, which was all the way back in season 1 when that first started occurring, hundreds of years, has created these, like, their minds start to just go early. And I think that helps explain it. But it is odd that we haven't seen Dusk have any, like, mental cognitive decline. Like, you have 10-ish days before you're getting zapped, but yet we're not seeing any of that mental decline. Like, does it happen to every Dusk, or is it just a precaution they take to just be like, we don't want to see him get bad?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded to me like it maybe in general happens, so like to all or most of them sooner, and so like moving that date prevents it from being visible to probably the public, because because that potentially undercuts your rule if people think that you don't have
the capacity,
you don't have all your wiles about you.
Right, that's fair. And then so now, are we just Star Wars? Because Dusk has now created basically the Death Star, right? Just making Death Stars, is that's the new thing?
Making Death Stars, but without dumb weaknesses.
I mean, I feel like the
that
weakness
we know of
is having a black hole. That seems dangerous.
or having somebody with a cognitive decline in charge of it.
Yeah, like if that thing breaks, that's I feel like that's like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Worse than the what was it, that sky elevator that they destroyed in the first season?
Yeah.
I feel like this would be huge.
I'm very curious what their plans are with this, because, Dusk seems to think that it's definitely a tipping point in their favor. I feel like this isn't something that psychohistory wouldn't be aware of. So I don't know. I wonder if it almost somehow ends up working against them. Like it looks like it is somehow some kind of like great plan that they could just destroy Calgon if it's a problem.
Right.
But somehow whether or not it goes into the wrong hands or the plan backfires, because the Mule seems pretty smart. It turns out that, come back to him in a little bit, but it seems like he's not just a powerful dude. Like I think is a good kind of schemer. And so I'm curious to see how this weapon plays in.
What makes you think he's a schemer? I'm curious.
When we saw the scene where he was like demonstrating his powers, so he didn't have to use them on everybody, I thought that was really smart, because like when we first meet him, he seems, or at least this season, he seems overpowered. Like nobody can beat him if he really can like make anybody do anything. This episode refined it a little bit and said, like, yeah, technically he can, but he can't do it too much. So he can't do it to everybody. I thought it was very smart to, if you have that strong power, to like use that as a way to, I only have to show it to get other people to fall in line.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because then that like artificially extends the reach of that power. People see that and then they're like, oh crap, I don't want that to be me. Yeah. So I'll just willingly fall in line.
That's fair. That is pretty smart and cunning for him to come up with. At first, I was kind of like, it felt very similar to me, that scene from his first scene, that he is just this guy that has this ability to control people. People might not believe him at first. Then he demonstrates his power. And then we were like, oh shit, he's a big bad. And so I felt like I want more from him, because I feel like we're just getting very small drops. But
yeah,
when you put it in the context of like, it is demonstrating that he can manipulate people without having to overextend himself, that's fair. And I thought we were going to see a little girl get murdered.
And also it nerfs his power a little bit so that he's not quite godlike, because then I think he is more able to be defeated.
Sure.
Like when we first saw him, my initial thought was like, how do you go against that?
Right. How do you beat somebody that can control basically an army to kill itself? Right.
So if it turns out that there are severe limits to that, then it does feel like it's a little bit more even of a playing field. Like it still seems like he probably has a pretty heavy advantage, but definitely much less advantage than what it looked like earlier.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'll give it that. That was
I liked on this planet, while we're on Calgon, the representation of Torin Mallow, and it felt like this felt like a double trick that they played on us, where it's like the first one, with last episode, where we heard that there was a Mallow, Randu Mallow, and we're like, oh, we're gonna meet a Mallow. And then he actually kind of seems like a bad guy and then dies really quickly. It's like, well, I guess not. And then it turns out, no, there's more Mallows. And, here's the one that we're going to be kind of interested in. And these like super wealthy people that have no cares, and like to have people wait on you hand and foot. Like this seems like an interesting dynamic, especially against somebody like Pritcher.
Yeah. Who, do you know Pritcher's name, his first name?
No.
Han. I literally said last episode he's Han Solo.
You did.
And his name is Han Pritcher. You can't make this stuff up. That's crazy. But yes, no, I did like the way that they, honestly, it feels pretty relevant to things that are going on now.
It does.
The state of the world, where it's just these kind of elite people that like, they see a thing is happening, a coup. They're even like, oh, we like to call it a coup. Like, but also are unfazed that a coup is happening. They're just like, well, that's just how it is. And so I do think it's an interesting little parallel of what we got going on today of just craziness happening. And it seems like we're all just kind of like, what do you do?
Yeah, I feel like this show has always done a good job of that, of feeling both like it is heavily based off of the distant past and yet still feeling extremely relevant to today.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this definitely felt like that, where I do think that there's, a larger disparity between the haves and the have-nots now than there has been, in at least like the recent past. And this seemed to definitely show that kind of like 1% and how carefree their lives are. And so while I don't necessarily think that like, I think without a foil, I think that these two characters could easily be obnoxious. I think potentially having the foil of like them with Pritcher, I think can make them a very endearing group. And I'm excited about like breaking into this gathering, seeing how like I like Pritcher. I like the way that he works.
I like Pritcher.
And it's interesting that he's like doing this stuff on his own. Like he's not the Foundation didn't tell him to go. Right. Harry didn't tell him to go that we know of.
He feels like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what his motivation of like why he thinks the Mule is so bad. Like why he would, basically ignore the Foundation, do his own thing, take the guy's ship. Like he's basically going rogue on this. And like that seems like a huge, jeopardization of your title, your rank. And so then you're going to just go over to this place that doesn't seem like anything is, a pirate took over. Why does it feel so like you have to be there?
I think that he is somebody that understands what the Foundation is actually supposed to be about, whereas the Inbers treat the Foundation as a way for them to have and hold power.
Mm-hmm.
And that expanding gives them more reach, more power. And they probably just use the Foundation and its knowledge as a tool to do that. And so, like, Inber was worried about the traders potentially leaving because then the Foundation loses some of its grasp. And I think that Pritcher is somebody who understands the bigger picture. Like, yeah, it's not necessarily great to lose people in the Foundation, but that's not the real problem. And that's not what the Foundation is about. So he can see that there is an actual dark force that is something to truly be worried about and at least needs to be investigated properly. You can't just ignore it.
Yeah. He also does seem really clever. He just seems like a smart guy.
He does.
So he's probably just like 10 steps ahead of everybody as well. But I am excited to see the dynamic of them with these two bozos that are... I mean, they're bozos, but I do feel there is an endearing quality to the bozos. Like, they seem like harmless bozos, like they're not malicious bozos. So I do think you're right that we will see this, like, we'll grow fond of them by the end of the show, I bet.
Yes.
I did like seeing their, like, house that they went in. I think that Foundation, I've liked this from the beginning, has really made, like, these environments feel real and lived in and have these different things. And we've seen a lot of like Trantor and the Palace. And, we saw like on Foundation or Terminus when they were first starting out, they had like all these, like, everything was a lot more hobbled together. Like it wasn't really like, we didn't have like crazy technologies. And then like seeing another planet with just like a house that's rich and all the little like gadgets in it and things that you can do, like it felt like a really cool environment. And I love that in the episodes of Foundation, like, even though they're on these weird different planets, the planets feel distinct, they feel very different, and they feel very real to the people that are there.
Yeah. And I think that like this planet is an interesting one because there is kind of familiarity to it while still being different. It feels like the pleasure district, but if that was an entire planet, you know, and that like the scale of that is just massive, but it makes sense when you think of like the scale of the galaxy, you know, that there might be like, especially if there is like an entire middle band that isn't on either of the two main sides, you know, that you might have an entire planet that's kind of driven to that. And it looks like what you would expect from that. And that's just an interesting representation that at first you're like, oh, that's weird. And then you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that totally tracks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think in the first episode they mentioned that it was a pleasure planet.
Yeah.
And I kind of was trying to think like, what does that mean? Like, what do you, like, what kind of, and I think they mentioned like Day goes there to gamble, or somebody goes there to gamble.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and it doesn't feel like we've seen a lot of the planet yet, because we've seen kind of like the ruling class, the whatever that guy was that was in control. I don't know if he's a king or a duke or whatever you call him. And then seeing these rich people that have their own like villa with staff. And so I definitely see the pleasure side of it, but I do want to see more of this planet, because this planet is cool, which we're going to go see a party there. It looks like in the next episode, I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I like the way that these worlds get revealed, and sometimes we see more to them and sometimes it's just glimpses. You know, when Hari got his body, I feel like the world that was on, we just got kind of hints of what happened to that world. You know, that there used to be this civilization and that these things came and kind of, these things were brought there in order to, I think, gobble up resources and kind of gobbled everything up. But there's like, it feels like there's so much more history that I wanted to see on that world.
Yeah.
And there's just not time. There's like the galaxy is too big for that. So sometimes we get stuff kind of fleshed out a little bit more. Sometimes we just get little peeks and glimpses into it. But it does make it seem large and rich and lived in. And like there's all these other histories, you know, more than just like what we can consume.
Yeah, like when Hober Mallow in the last season was on that one planet where he switched with the king, where he was going to be...
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was such a cool planet. It looked like it had a lot of interesting stuff. We're never going back. We don't know any of the political dynamics of that planet. We don't know what they're doing. It was an interesting planet. We'll never see him again.
Yeah, we were barely on there, and yet the architecture looked unique, like the outfits... Like we got a glimpse of their society and like everything about it seemed unique and interesting. And that's it.
That's all. Nothing to see here. Lastly, how this episode ended.
Okay.
With Dawn talking to Gaal. This is a first. I feel like Gaal, you know, she was there in the beginning kind of with Hari, trying to like argue the case for Terminus, get sent off, has been on her own this little journey. You know, I'm thinking Empire probably doesn't even know who Gaal Dornick is. Like she is such a small footnote. And yet now she's opening up communications with Dawn. What implications do you think that this...
I have no clue. And also under the false pretense of pretending to be the Mule.
Wait, so you think she's pretending to be the Mule?
Maybe I misunderstood it.
Okay, so like, no, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I thought at first that he was going to be talking to the Mule, the way that they had set it up. But then in my mind, I think I thought it was just because they're talking about the Mule. Like, I didn't think he thought she was the Mule. But I could be wrong. I might have misinterpreted that whole scene.
It was so short and definitely meant to be like a surprise ending that they'll flesh out afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I have no clue where that's going, what her intentions are. I mean, the closest I can get is kind of like my last theory about like why Hari gave Demerzel the prime radiant of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
But it was just kind of surprising to me that she would let Empire know that there is a second foundation. So it seemed like she would want to hide her identity.
Right.
In order to protect that, because like that's the whole point of the second foundation is like everybody knows about the first one and it's doing kind of the hard work. But, unfortunately, people are obviously going to kind of take advantage of it and do some of the wrong things. So the second foundation is supposed to like quietly steer everything in the shadows.
Right. It is also odd to me that she's speaking to Dawn, because technically Dawn has not become day. She's speaking to Dawn, who is probably the most like Cleon Empire of the clones that we've seen probably since, the last crazy day. But he seems very much like he's going to bring it back. He's going to fix everything. He has these, it feels like, plots to like want to make Empire bring Empire back to what it used to be. And so it's interesting that she's talking to him, versus Day, who we know Day doesn't care, or Dusk, who was a previous Day, but she is talking to Dawn, and maybe she's counting on Dawn being the next Day.
I assume she knew about that because it mentioned something about them having people all over the galaxy, and it seemed like those people are incognito, so people don't realize that they are Mentalics working for a second foundation. And so I think she had intel that, current Empire is kind of fractured and that 10 days to Ascension. So no point in really trying to form anything with Dusk. Current Day is kind of MIA, at least like his cares for doing anything for Empire or MIA. And so Dawn is the one to go to. And in 10 days, he will have the throne. So, why not open the dialogue now? And then he will have the real power soon.
That's fair. That seems...
But I still don't know, like, why she reached out.
I know. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like this episode was, a little slow, but it set up some things that I think are going to have some pretty big payoffs, which I'm excited for.
Yeah.
Now, do you think there's... Sorry, one last question. Do you think there's a reason to connect all of these... Like Hober Mallow, he left a huge mark with what he did to Empire. Do we need these people to be descendants of Hober Mallow? Like, is that going to be relevant to the story? Or do we think that it's just like hey, remember Hober Mallow? Here's his offspring. Here's his descendants.
I don't know. I mean, I think having names that are familiar to us, helps kind of endure it and bring it in. But I did think that there was like a good reason that the Mallows were kind of vaulted, because what Hober Mallow did was such a huge thing that allowed for the grasp of Empire to finally really loosen, and for Foundation to expand and so much to change, that I'm sure that name going forward kind of provided a lot of opportunity to those people. And so it wouldn't be surprising to me, that name would kind of flourish and get to where it is now, where you have, a Mallow who at this point is living in luxury and doesn't need to even do work. Like, it sounds like he's not doing the family business of being a trader, right, and instead is just
hanging out,
living garishly, like to the point where, they can even bring back old things from the past. Like, I don't know if marriage was, or if it was just like being newlyweds, just for fun. Like, let's bring this thing back.
It sounded like marriages don't happen anymore. Even though it did feel like, and maybe marriage is a different word, because like I know Empire and Sereth were going to get a union. I guess they never really said married.
Maybe it was the pomp and circumstance of marriage, that they don't go through the whole like newlywed thing and all the, maybe
honeymoon.
Yeah, honeymoons, and maybe it's just like a little bit matter of fact of like legalities, so that if somebody dies, like things get split appropriately.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, that was an odd little thing in how they added that, and they're just like, oh, you're gonna get married. I'm sure you're gonna start doing it too now. It's very odd thing, bringing back these relics of the past, just like Day brought back animals from the past.
I love this Day.
I know, he's such a great Day. Yeah. He's so funny. And Lee Pace, you did it again. Great acting. Feels like you're a completely different Day, but also the same Day.
Yes.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along. Come back next week as we tackle Foundation Season 3, Episode 3. But until then, I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.